while they were offering sacrifices. He said to them, "Do you think the suffering of these Galileans proves that they were more sinful than all the other Galileans? No, I tell you, but unless you change your hearts and lives, you'll die just as they did." What about those 12 people who were killed when the Tower of Siloam fell on them? Do you think that they were more guilty of wrongdoing than everyone else who lives in Jerusalem? No, I tell you, but unless you change your hearts and lives, you will die just as they did. Jesus told this parable. A man owned a fig tree planted in a vineyard. He came looking for fruit on it and found none. He said to his gardener, "Look, I've come looking for fruit on this fig tree for the past 3 years, and I've never found any. Cut it down. Why should it continue depleting the soil's nutrients?" The gardener responded, "Lord, give it one more year and I'll dig around it and give it fertilizer. Maybe it will produce fruit next year. If not, then you can cut it down." Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. A woman was there who had been suffering from an unclean spirit for 18 years, who had been disabled by an unclean spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and couldn't stand up straight. When he saw her, the Lord called her to him and said, "Woman, you are set free from your sickness." He placed his hands on her, and she straightened up at once and praised God. The synagogue leader, incensed that Jesus had healed on the Sabbath, said, "There are 6 days during which work is permitted. Come and be healed on those days and not on the Sabbath day." When Jesus heard this, he said, The Lord said to him, "Hypocrites, won't each of you on the Sabbath untie your ox or donkey from its stall and lead it out to get a drink? Then isn't it necessary for this woman, a daughter of Abraham, bound by Satan for 18 long years, be set free from her bondage on the Sabbath day?" When he said these things, all his opponents were put to shame. But all those in the crowd rejoiced at all the extraordinary things he was doing. Jesus said, "What is God's kingdom like? It's like a mustard seed that someone took and planted in a garden. It grew and developed into a tree, and the birds in the sky nested in its branches." Again he asked, "What can I compare God's kingdom? It's like yeast, which a woman took and hid in a bushel of wheat flour until the yeast had worked its way through the hole." Jesus traveled through cities and villages, teaching and making his way to Jerusalem. Someone said to him, "Will only a few be saved?" Jesus said to them, "Make every effort to enter through the narrow gate. Many, I tell you, will try to enter and won't be able to. Once the owner of the house gets up and shuts the door, then you'll stand outside and knock on the door saying, 'Lord, open the door for us.' He will reply, 'I don't know you or where you're from.' Then you'll begin to say, 'We ate and drank in your presence and you taught in our streets.' He will respond, 'I don't know you or where you are from. Go away from me, all you evildoers.' There will be weeping and grinding of teeth when you see Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all the prophets in God's kingdom, but you yourselves will be thrown out. People will come from east and west, north and south, and sit down to eat in God's kingdom. Look, those who are last will be first, and those who are first will be last." At that time, some Pharisees approached Jesus and said, "Go, get away from here, because Herod wants to kill you." Jesus said to them, "Go tell that fox, Look, I'm throwing out demons and healing people today, tomorrow, and the next day, but it's impossible. Look, I'm throwing out demons and healing people today, tomorrow, and the next day, but it's impossible for a prophet to be killed outside of. But it's necessary for me to travel today, tomorrow, and the next day because it's impossible for a prophet to be killed outside of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those who are sent to you. How often I've wanted to gather your people, just as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings. But you didn't want that. Look, your house is abandoned. I tell you that you won't see me until the time comes when you say blessings on the one who comes in the Lord's name. One Sabbath, when Jesus went to share a meal in the home of one of the leaders of the Pharisees, they were watching him closely. A man suffering from an abnormal swelling of the body was there. Jesus asked the lawyers and Pharisees, does the law allow healing on the Sabbath or not? But they said nothing. Jesus took hold of the sick man, cured him, and then let him go. He said to them, suppose your child or ox fell into a ditch on the Sabbath day. Wouldn't you immediately pull it out? But they had no response. When Jesus noticed how the guests sought out the best seats at the table, he told them a parable. When someone invites you to a wedding celebration, don't take your seat in the place of honor. Someone more highly regarded than you could have been invited by your host. The host who invited both of you will come and say, give your seat to this other person. Embarrassed, you'll take your seat in the least important place. Instead, go and sit in the least important place. When your host approaches you, he will say, friend, move up here to a better spot. Then you'll be honored in the presence of all your fellow guests. All who lift themselves up will be brought low, and those who make themselves low will be lifted up. Jesus also said to the person who had invited him, when you host a lunch or dinner, don't invite your friends, your brothers and sisters, your relatives, or rich neighbors. If you do, they will invite you in return, and that will be your reward. Instead, when you receive an invitation, when you give a banquet, invite the poor, crippled, lame, and blind, and you'll be blessed because they can't repay you. Instead, you'll be repaid when the just are resurrected. When one of the dinner guests heard Jesus' remarks, he said to Jesus, happy are those who will feast in God's kingdom. Jesus replied, a certain man hosted a large dinner and invited many people. When it was time for the dinner to begin, he sent his servant to tell the invited guests, come, the dinner is now ready. One by one, they all began to make excuses. The first one told him, I bought a farm and must go and see it. Please excuse me. Another said, I bought 5 teams of oxen and I'm going to check on them. Please excuse me. Another said, I just got married, so I can't come. When he returned, the servant reported these excuses to his master. The master of the house became angry and said to his servant, go quickly to the city streets, the busy ones and the side streets, and bring the poor, crippled, blind, and lame. The servant replied, Master, your instructions have been followed, and there is still room. The master said to the servant, go to the highways and back alleys and urge people to come in so that my house will be filled. I tell you, not one of those who are invited will taste my dinner. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus. Turning to them, he said, whoever comes to me and doesn't hate father and mother, spouse and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even one's own life, cannot be my disciple. Whoever doesn't carry their own cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. one of you wanted to build a tower, wouldn't you first sit down and calculate the cost to determine whether you had enough money to complete it? Otherwise, when you have laid the foundation but couldn't finish the tower, all who see it will begin to belittle you. They will say, here's the person who began construction and couldn't complete it. Or what king would go to war against another king without first sitting down to consider whether his 10,000 soldiers could go up against the 20,000 coming against him? And if he didn't think he could win, he would send a representative to discuss terms of peace while his enemy was still a long way off. While his enemy was still a long way off. In the same way, whoever isn't willing to give up all his possessions cannot be my disciple. Salt is good, but if salt loses its flavor, how can it become salty again? It has no value, neither for the soil nor for the manure pile. People throw it away. Whoever has ears to hear should pay attention